Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to finish off today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. If you'd like to submit your own special selection, you can find a link to do so in the description below. Today's special selection comes at us from Jacob. It says, please take a look at Go Be Forgotten by Krallice. There are some very aesthetically pleasing harmonic walls of sound that may improve your outlook on the bands a bit. So, if you don't remember, I checked out Krallice a long time ago. You can find a link to that right here, something like that, a little card up there. To say I wasn't ready for it might be underselling my very visceral reaction to that track. It was very early in me starting this, very early in me getting to extreme metal, and it really shook me, to say the least. So I think I'm in a better position to explore Krallice at this point than I was then. This being a shorter song might actually help as well. I think the other one was 19 minutes. This one's only 11, and I'm just more acclimated to what I'm going to assume is going to be some speed, wall of sounds, very aggressive metal. So, let's dive into this. We got Krallice's Go Be Forgotten. Interesting, we're in like an 11-8. We could also just be doing a 4-4-3 kind of vibe. But I like to think of it in an 11. It works better in my brain. Is there a synth going on in the background, or some sort of choir sounds? Yeah, I love that bass movement there. A little bit of a tempo shift. I think we also had a time signature change, but I'm not sure yet. Yeah, so we're in 4-4 now, or maybe 6-8 with the triplet feel on the 4. Drums though, polymetric stuff all over the place. And we're back to this 11 idea. It also fits in at 7 though. Yeah, that's weird. I like this little break here. This is something I asked for the last time we checked out Krallice. Oh, I like that idea of the instruments fading in through the noise, that static, the compression. Yeah. Ooh. What a very bright, weightless way to end that, given the weight of so much of the song. Drummers all over the place. As far as instruments, sometimes it's tom, sometimes it's snare, but just really utilizing every part of his kit. Yeah, get a little bit of groove in there. And I love those really sharp cymbal attacks there in the previous section. Really driving home a lot of the weight, but it's interesting that all these attacks feel lighter than what we had just come out of. Interesting too. Yeah, they're actually playing wrong notes, or the guitar's out of tune at this point. And it's still happening here. It's just the dissonance is covered up. more menacing element to it now. It's very sharpened to a point. Interesting. Well, on the plus side, I made it out of this one fine. I don't feel as man, what happened I think I got like physically drained. Like I actually became tired listening to it. Um, but yeah, so I came out this side better. I have a much stronger appreciation for what's going on here. But there was an element here that I don't remember in the last one, and that's the synthesizer. It's it's an interesting part of the song that I was just not expecting given my last um showcasing of them. All right, so I think the best place to start right here though is the atmosphere, right? Because that's what I remember most about Krallice from the last time we checked them out is the way it made me feel. That crushing, oppressive weight of the wall of sound, mixed with having the vocals pushed down into the mix to the point that it even sounds like the music is overpowering them. It's not just this ridiculously weighty, and I do mean ridiculous. There's a lot of weight to their style of playing. There is pressure. There is this downward force on the music, and it's not just overpowering your ears. It's not just that it's so loud, so constant, such a full sound that it feels oppressive. It's also drowning out the vocals, which are screamed, right? These are harsh vocals. They should be elevated in volume, and even that, or at least the illusion, the impression of having more volume due to the harshness, it still is nothing compared to the volume of the guitars and the drums and the bass, this wall of sound. It is a masterful use of mixing to exaggerate a feeling, to exaggerate an atmosphere. That is what I remember from Krallice. 19 minutes of pure crushing weight. And this takes that same idea. There's still the constant attacks, the tremolo picking, the double bass kicks, the blast beats, I think, in a couple of places. And it's a very full, constant oppression, this sonic aggression. That's still there. They're still drowning out the vocals. It's still a very wide production. But it's not really crushing. There's a levity this time around. It's bright. There's a couple of moments of melody. It feels like joyous musical weight. I don't know that I have the vocabulary to properly speak of what this makes me feel, because what it does seems to be in opposition. It still has that aggressive wall of sound, but it trades out the brutality in the notes and in the mixing of these individual timbres for something that feels a bit more uplifting, which tends to go against that crushing weight that the rhythmic idea suggests. Our notes and our rhythms are in opposition here, and it creates something that is both weightless and weighty. I don't have a word for this. It is an oxymoron of a song if I've ever heard one. It is just simultaneously an extremely weight-bearing song, and it's also is almost weightless in some sections. And I, even now thinking back on it, I don't understand it. It definitely confused me going into it. It confused me throughout, and now that it's over, I still don't have a strong idea of how I feel about it, and I still don't have vocabulary to properly put it into words what it's making me feel. But I do think it's a strong part of this production, and it's why I wanted to bring it up. It's such a unique style. I've always talked about utilizing these constant fast attacks, the tremolo picking, the double bass kicks, and the wall of sound production to create oppressive, gravity-inducing sounds to really make the listener sound like they're or feel like they're being crushed under the weight of this music. And they take those same ideas and remove that crushing element to it. It's still brutal, but it's not oppressive. And I never really considered that that could be a thing. I just associated that style of playing with the brutality of it, with that crushing element. It's really interesting to hear the atmosphere get changed, but nothing else, and how they can utilize these ideas in a completely different context. Very cool. It also leads us to another element, though, that this atmosphere is created through the use of extra layers. There's a synth here that I don't remember. I just got done talking about it, and it does a lot of work at helping to provide this levity. In one of the, I think it was the second section, when it really debuts, when it really comes in, it feels like a choir lifting up the weight of this wall of sound. It sits under everything and is a protective barrier between the crushing elements of the music and me, the listener. It elevates everything in the track just through its brightness, right? It's a very bright, uplifting sound. And it's an interesting placement too. Usually when you would want these angelic choir lines, you would have them over the band. That's its more standardized placement. But to put it under, I think is it's a genius move because of what it implies. Like I mentioned, it feels like it's lifting the song up rather than standing above it. It is a part of the mix, not something that is better than it. And it has that protective element to it. Like I said, it feels like it's removing that crushing element from me. It's a protective barrier between me and the wall of sound. It's fascinating. It really is. Just to see these small elements being implemented in a way that takes something that I found to be extremely draining the last time I heard anything similar to this, and to turn it around and make it feel uplifting and empowering in some places. Um, and it makes me wonder, like, what is the different? This is 2017, if this is to be believed. When was the other one come out? Was that before or after? Why was the synth player added? Why did they shift from something so dark and weighty towards something a bit brighter? What were the things that led from what I've heard before to what they're doing here? It's a very drastic change in atmosphere. I absolutely love it, at least in the context of seeing the evolution of a band. I want to go on record right here. This is still not something I'm going to seek out in my casual listening. I'm not going to say that I enjoyed every moment of this. It is still not my cup of tea, but I do really enjoy what they're going for, and I love taking ideas that they've utilized in one manner and completely flipping that on its head. Music is so versatile, and to think that, one thing is going to be pigeonholed into a single style. I fell into that going into this, and to be told I'm wrong, just in the best way. I love it. Now, the synthesizer isn't the only instrument that is doing this as well. It isn't the only way that they're providing this uplifting element either. They do step away from that constant 16th note attack. And this is something that I asked for at the end of that last Krallice video in my analysis. A moment to breathe. That's all I really needed. This song did not feel anywhere near as long as it was. It's 11 minutes long, and honestly, to me, it felt more like 6 or 7. And I think a lot of that is that middle section where we kind of bring everything down. And we have that really cool effect of the song cutting through the noise. Right? I thought that was very cool, where we had 4 passes or 3 repetitions of this idea of just this raw static, and then the static kind of giving way for the drums and the bass and the guitar to come through, and they kind of shine through a little bit, and then they fade back out, kind of like the static covering them back up, and then they shine through a little bit, and then they get covered back up, and they do this a few times, and then the song comes back in proper. It is a phenomenal way to have storytelling through the production while also providing a moment for the listener to breathe. We haven't really gotten rid of the wall of sound concepts, but we have created a type of lull, right? We don't necessarily have to come down to 0 or 1 as far as layering and volume and stuff goes. We don't need to have an acoustic guitar section to break this up, just anything. We're dropping this from 10 to like a 6. It isn't massively quiet here, but that 10 to 6 feels huge because of the contrast that it is. And then we get these slow peaks back up into the 10, and we get slowly reintroduced to it, which is a fantastic way to bring the listener back in. Now, for seasoned listeners of this style of music, maybe this doesn't work specifically for them, but for me, who I'm not used to this, having these moments to breathe is huge. It is a massive help for newcomers to the genre to get more acclimated to what's going on in it. And then we also have moments where we get rid of the 16th note attacks for something a bit more groovier, right? We have a quarter note attack section somewhere. I think that was the part where I said it was like super groovy. There was doing some real interesting thing on the ride cymbal, getting these really sharp attacks on the bell of it, I think is what was going on. And we also had a moment, a couple sections earlier, where we were hitting these more of a less static rhythmic structure, where we would get like da 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 da. So we would get a couple of beats or a couple of hits on the beat, really striking the rigidity that we see throughout most of this song, but then we get a little triplet flare at the end of it. And that triplet flare, much like that moment of pure static, allows us to get away from that highly rigid assault for just a moment and feel a different rhythm, feel a different groove against it. It allows us to breathe from the assault of the 16th notes. Musically, nothing has changed. We're still in the wall of sound. We still have the screaming going on. The guitars are still, giving us all that super amount of fuzz and distortion, and just the raw power there. But rhythmically, we're hearing a bit of variation, and a variation does wonders for helping a song not become stagnant. And that might be a weird word to say for a song that's just constantly moving at a breakneck pace. But, like I've always said, that if you're at 10 and you don't change it, your 10's eventually not going to feel like 10 anymore. It is the new norm. So if you're constantly running at this this full speed 16th notes, it's going to become standard eventually. It's going to become, I don't want to say boring, but expected. And to change that up is not only going to allow the listener a moment to breathe and have their mind sort of re-engage with what's going on, but it's going to feel like when we get back into that 16th note attack that it's going to have an extra punch to it. We've had a moment away from it so that when we return to it, it's going to feel fresh again. Contrast, I think, is super important for stuff like this. Although, as like the last time we checked out Krallice, I do acknowledge that contrast would not have really helped for what they were going for, what I believe they were going for, which was that constant oppressive feel. Contrast is not going to help that if you're aiming for a constant atmosphere. And for what it's worth, I think, well, they did achieve what I think they were aiming for with that last. I really should check this out, so I stopped calling it That Last Song. Monolith. Monolith of Possession. Yeah, that's the one. It was, I mean, a monolith. It was a single sound for 19 minutes. Very oppressive, very draining. Would not have been able to achieve that if they had introduced elements of contrast like this. Thematically, they did exactly what they should have done, even if I did not enjoy it. um, but yes, this is kind of the other side of the coin, taking these same ideas and wrapping them up in ideas of context, or sorry, contrast, and changing up some of the ideas going on, introducing variety, both volume-wise, width-wise, structurally, and rhythmically. And they do it on all four fronts to create a song that has more flow and momentum to it than sitting in a single idea. Completely different theme, probably completely different desires for what they wanted their song to do, which is why both of these songs deviate so vastly from each other. But context and intention is very important when you're looking at a song. Subjectively, I enjoy this one a lot more because of what it does. But objectively, if they had tried to write Monolith of Possession like this, it would have failed. The intents were different. You must have your intentions clear in mind before you write something so that what you write can match up with what you are attempting to achieve with the art. I think the last thing I want to touch on just real quick before we dive into the lyrics is the bass. I kind of don't remember the bass in Krallice, but I was also using worse headphones at the time and also just not really adjusted to the sound. So that could have been a problem too, but I love the bass presence here. A lot of the time it is kind of doing what everyone else is doing, just constant attacks, but it does have some really nice lines that it introduces. It kind of takes up a melody idea and in a few sections where the guitars are mostly there for the textural element. And it just has these really nice rising and falling lines that are kind of like a roller coaster. It kind of embodies that idea of walking a bass line, going up a scale and coming down a scale. However, here it doesn't feel like it's perfectly scale work. It feels like it's more melodic writing, just with really great flow to it. Before we go into the lyrics, man, I almost forgot about this. What is up with that guitar, right? So we got an interesting look into the guitar when we kind of pulled all the layers back there at the end, and it was out of tune. Either that or they were purposefully playing notes that did not work together. But to me, it sounded like a tonality issue, not so much a key issue. And it made me really dig into the timbre itself when the full band came back in, and I think the notes were still wrong, or so to speak, the notes were still creating a ton of dissonance. And it makes me want to go back to the beginning and see if that was true as well, because it's introducing an interesting idea. I didn't pick up on this tonality issue, this intonation problem. Well, not really a problem. The intonation. We'll just objectively speak about it. It is intonation. It is two notes not being in tune with each other. I think it's probably present throughout the entire song, but it's being so heavily covered up by the destruction of that core timbre, whether it's the clipping on the overdrive or the compression or any of the effects pedals they have going on that add the extra fuzz to it. These notes are sitting underneath the fuzz, underneath the crackle, underneath that static, and it kind of gets to a point where there's so much destruction on this core timbre that the intonation doesn't happen. It's not heard. It just kind of blends in into that fuzz, into that static. And it introduces me to a unique idea of what if they're purposefully have out of tuned instruments to amplify the wall of sound through this destructive effects that they put on their guitars. Is this something that they do, and have they found a way to wield dissonance harmoniously? Because, like I mentioned, up until that point when it was clear as day that these 2-3 notes they were playing were not creating consonant tones, I didn't notice it. But thinking back retrospectively, I'm pretty sure it was always there. I just never noticed it. And dissonance is something I pick up on all the time. That is one of my key things. Anytime that there's a dissonant note, I will bring it up. Even if it's just a single note, it's something I will remember through the analysis section because a dissonance stands out to me. I think it's a very important thing to talk about because when it is used, especially in bands like this, not your local garage band that hasn't put in enough practice. We're talking about large bands putting out albums, sold out concerts. If they introduce dissonance into a studio recording, it's intentional. And the intentionality of dissonance goes against a lot of what most people are going to think of harmonious consonant music. It's something that I think, at least for right now, with the way that the current mainstream music is created, and I'm talking about everything, mainstream metal, mainstream rock, pop, country, techno, most of the larger bands out there make consonant music. Dissonance is something that is rarely utilized. So when it is, it needs to be talked about because there's an intentionality to it, right? Consonance is the default. Dissonance has intent. That's kind of what I'm getting at here. And for me not to pick up on it at all until it was blatantly in my face, it's surprising, but two, like I said, they made it not sound dissonant. In fact, it amplifies the ideas that they're already going for. And it calls into question the tonality of their guitars. Are they playing guitars where they just don't care about the tuning? Or do they have, well, I guess they would have to have specific tunings for each string, because they would still have to play the same notes. But maybe the specificity of the notes, it doesn't need to be perfect. They don't need to be exactly on A. They can be a little up or a little sharp or a little flat on it. It's not about honing in on that perfect A. It's about getting near enough to it. Huh. Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of blown away by that. It blew my mind when it happened. And then when the rest of the band came in and I really honed in on that timbre, which is, like I said, really getting hidden by a lot of these destructive elements, and I still heard the dissonance, I was like, wow, they made dissonance consonant. That's just phenomenal. Let me dive into these lyrics and see what's going on here. These are interesting. So it starts, there's actually not a lot of lyrics. Being a 10-minute song, I kind of thought there was more spoken word. Maybe there is Well, I meant to say I thought there was more vocals in the track. Maybe some of these lines get repeated, which is why it would feel like there's more vocals than there are unique words. But also the vocals are so drowned out half the time that it's possible I was just hearing fuzz and thought it was the vocals going off when it was just kind of in that same sort of crackliness that the vocals have in their mix. So anyway, it starts off in the first couple of stanzas. I thought we were talking about purgatory. He says he's stuck in a place where people go to be forgotten, so go be forgotten. Says time fades to gray. I sit and stare at the future. And I'm like, okay, so we got kind of a purgatory idea. But then we enter in a specific call to the earth. It says, death winds snake their way forth, trembling with the earth tonight. And then it says, life functions on and will survive. Organic matter shall again arrive at consciousness. And this makes me think that we're looking at a sort of apocalypse of higher evolution, where maybe everything that isn't microbes gets wiped out and we watch a re-evolution of the dominant species on Earth, whatever that may become once the organic matter becomes conscious again. It says planning what and how to sacrifice all is not possible, leaving behind the pleasures better for it perhaps. Scorching an era of evolution away, go to be forgotten. So there's this idea again of getting rid of all evolved life form, leaving only the lowest level stuff. And like he says, organic matter shall again arrive at consciousness. So watching the evolution again from the most basic of life forms back up to more complex ones. It's an interesting idea. I don't know where this opening comes in. Like I said, the opening still kind of sounds like purgatory to me. Unless it could also be taken as a bored deity of some sort who can only look towards the future and decides at random points to wipe away the evolution of this planet and see what happens the next time. Kind of like playing a strategy game and not liking where it is. So, SimCity, yeah, not liking what your city's doing. So introducing some tornadoes and seeing what people do after the natural disasters take form. That's kind of what it feels like to me, which is very interesting because to me, this idea is still oppressive. It's still weighty. We have this higher being that we cannot fathom. Having complete control over what we experience as reality and deciding at any point in time that once again they're getting bored, so let's wipe the slate clean and see what happens when we start fresh again. And it almost sounds like it's happened before. And to call this place, this earth, this reality that we perceive as the truth, as simply a place to be forgotten on, it's a very dark, weighty, foreboding idea. And the brightness that I was talking about, that this song kind of had this weight lifted off of it in the music, does not shine through in these lyrics at all. There's something very dreary, nihilistic about the lyrics here. I do think it's interesting, though, this idea of organic matter rising again. I wonder how close this is to the section where we have everything wash over into static and then having the song itself poke back up into, trying to get out of the static and having this happen a few times. And then for the song to come back in full and overcome the static. The static could be after scorching all the evolution away, the organic matter arriving at consciousness again, this push through evolution until we hit higher forms of life again. With the song being the push of evolution and the static being the emptiness that happens right after the higher life forms are wiped out. Like I said, I don't know where that relates. I think it's around the same time, given that that part was like in the 6 minute mark. So just over the halfway part, closer to the end of the song. And this line about organic matter rising again is in the second half of the lyrics. However, as I noted, the vocals are not placed everywhere throughout the song. So it's very possible that this could still be in the first half of the track. But I think that would be a pretty cool lining up of things. You know, he says that, and then we hear the music, or we hear the static wipe away the music, and the music slowly fades back in, or it attempts to fade back in a couple of times before doing so. But other than that, I don't see any correlation here. The lyrics feel like they would be right at home with the Krallice that I heard last time on Monolith. There's this bleak weight about what he's talking about that I don't think lines up particularly well with the brightness that the higher range in the organ or the synthesizer and the higher range in the guitars really speaks to. There's a levity in the music that I don't feel is present in the lyrics here. But this is where you guys come in. Hit me up in the comments. What do you think? You know, how do you think these lyrics compare to the music? Or maybe you heard something else in the music that actually lines up with these lyrics better. Maybe you've seen an interview or something. You can throw that my way. We started a discussion that way. I don't know. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know what's going on. Above the comment section is a description box. In there is a link for Linktree. Everything related to the channel is in there. You can support the channel through Patreon, join the Discord, follow me on Twitter, pick up some merch, submit a special selection. There's just a ton of stuff, man. Go check it out. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. UTC as usual. We'll be looking at our final hard rock track and looking at a creator request, which is where a band gets in contact with me and asks me to check out their music. Until next time, remember to be critical but not cynical of the music you listen to. Have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.